In the Lord, in the Lord, my soul's made good. In the Lord, my soul's been anchored. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored, anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, my soul's been anchored in the Lord, my soul's been anchored in the Lord.
Before I stay and help one day,
My soul's been anchored in the Lord.
I'd sing and pray myself away.
My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored.
Hi, welcome to Verse of the Day. My name is Brandon Hathaway, and I'm the preacher here at the Westside Church of Christ in Owensboro, Kentucky. I want to thank you for joining me today as we open up our Bibles and study the Word of God. We're continuing our study through the book of Isaiah, and we're in chapter 40 today. Isaiah chapter 40, if you're following along, and we're going to look at verses 12 through 14. And again, I want to encourage that you read the entire chapter. Again, the entire Bible is a good Bible, right? Good book. But a lot in this chapter is the way I might say it. That continue on this point that we're making here, continues on the power and might of God. And so here in Isaiah 40 and verse 12, it says, "Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, measured heaven with a span, and calculated the dust of the earth in a measure, weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, or as his counselor has taught him? With whom did he take counsel? And who instructed him? Who taught him in the path of justice? Who taught him knowledge? Who showed him the way of understanding?" And so here it brings out this point that as we might sit up and people try to start questioning God and questioning his power and what he has done, it is so interesting because as you go through it again, who is like God, that has measured the water, and not just measured it, but measured it with, the scoop of his hand, the hollow of his hand. Sometimes we try to scoop water up, and that's how much water we can hold in our hands, and of course it's leaking through. God holds the water of the earth, right? He measured the span, the heaven with the spans. He calculated the dust of the earth, right? Who's got a cup measurement big enough to measure how much dust there is in the earth, to number the sands of the sea. God's knows it all. God has measured these things. God knows these things. God created it all. And then it gets into this next part of who's directed the Spirit of the Lord. Who would be able to direct the Spirit, or has, as his counselor, has taught him? Who would teach God? Who would take God and counsel him, instruct him, teach him the path of justice, teach him knowledge, show him the way of understanding? That's who we go to. God is the all-knowing. He's the most wonderful, most knowledge, most understanding, better than any of us, any person that's ever lived. That is our God. As you go through the rest of this chapter, Isaiah 40, it also is one of those verses that you can turn to that, what verse was that? Give me a second here. I want to bring that up. But it brought out how he sits in the heavens and looks at verse 22. It is he who sits above the circle of the earth. Again, this is that verse that we can turn to and say, if people would have just read their Bible, if people would have read Isaiah, they would have saw the world was circular, and God knew that because he created it when people were still saying it was flat, right? And so there's a lot of good stuff here in this chapter that speaks to the understanding and knowledge of our God. And so, again, I appreciate you joining me today. I hope that your study goes well as you're going through this chapter. And ever that I can assist in studying that and looking more detail, please let me know, and I'll do my best to help and assist. I want to thank you for joining me this morning. I hope you have a blessed day, and if the Lord is willing, I'll talk to you later.